not down here to start a fight. I'm not down here to stoke a fire. I'm not down here to character assassinate anybody. I'm down here tonight because I want to be able to give you folks the truth. I want you to be able to hear what's actually going on down in Des Moines from this legislator's opinion. Our Republican Party platform, in the last part of the preamble, says it has taken many years to move away from constitutional government, and it is unlikely that we will be able to return to the vision of our illustrious founding fathers overnight. And what that says to me is that Republicans across the state recognize that we can't go for the Hail Mary pass every time. We're not going to be able to take back all the ground that's been lost over the past few decades in one fell swoop. We have got to take a step at a time. If we have the opportunity to make great gains, great strides, great, let's do it. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to work within the parameters of what we have of the divided government. Now, Mary Ann brought up the late-term abortion ban. I was proud to be able to sponsor that and author that. And work through the process. Mary Ann did a fantastic job floor managing that bill. No, it didn't get passed by the Senate. But what didn't happen? Leroy Carhart does not have a business over here in Council Bluffs, Iowa, to do abortion. So we may not have got the legislation ultimately passed and signed into law, but we achieved our objective. We achieved the goal. I think that's a success. Mary Ann mentioned about the information that was passed out at the last Central Committee meeting. I just want to set the record straight and tell you what the intent is behind all these bills. One of the bills is sponsored by Representative Tom Shaw. He's a colleague of Mary Ann's, mine, and Greg's. Good guy, principled legislator. He's got his own ideas about how to get something done. That's fine. I don't disparage him for it. I think his bill has some holes in it, and that's why I didn't co-sponsor it. I told him as much. We had a very private, heart-to-heart conversation. This is the bill that there are some that call the pure personhood bill. I disagree. House File 171 was on that sheet as well. This is one of the bills that I sponsored and filed. I've been filing this for quite a few years now. This bill goes into the Iowa Code to define when life begins. It's actually pretty simple. I want to read you a part of it. It creates a new section. It says, whenever the word person appears in the criminal code relating to crimes against a person means all living human beings from the beginning of their biological development as human organisms, regardless of age, race, sex, gender, capacity to function, condition of physical or mental dependency or disability, or method of sexual or asexual reproduction used, whether existing in vivo or in vitro, and each person is accorded the same rights and protections guaranteed to all persons by the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa and the laws of this state. How is this not personhood? Now, there are other exceptions in this bill, but they're not the exceptions that most people still throw out there and say, well, that doesn't make it a pro-life bill. One of the major things that people take exception to in this bill is that it does not criminalize the mother, but it criminalizes everybody else who assists or performs the act of the abortion. Now, you might ask me, why doesn't it criminalize the mother? Shouldn't we be punishing those mothers? I've been serving on the board of directors for Iowa Right to Life with two very good constituents of mine from my district for about the past 4 years now. And during my time on that board, and also as a legislator for the past 7 years, I've learned a lot, and I've still got a lot to learn. But one of the things I've learned is that if we're truly to be successful in ending abortion, it's not going to be necessarily through the legislative process of forcing it on people. We have got to change our culture. We have got to change how people view human life. We've got to change hearts and minds. Those mothers out there that undergo abortions, they are scarred for life. I've heard testimonies from some of those mothers. Their punishment is that they had the abortion. Everybody else, you restrict the practice, you do away with it, it's not going to be available anymore. So that's one of the biggest exceptions that people take to that legislation. The next bill, House File 173. Over the summer, the pro-life community came together. And when I say the pro-life community, I mean as many of the pro-life and pro-family organizations throughout Iowa that wanted to participate in a group discussion about what can they do to help legislators save the unborn. Because that's the ultimate intent here. It's not about passing legislation. It's It's not about getting on the grandstand and saying, hey, look what I did. It's about saving those innocent unborn lives. So when they came together, they coalesced around one common thread. And that thread was the elimination of webcam abortions. For those of you who aren't familiar with what a webcam abortion is, I'll just run through it real quick. It's where a doctor sits in Des Moines and over a computer interviews a young mother down here in Council Bluffs, right off Broadway, and he says, okay, you can have a webcam abortion. He pushes a button in Des Moines, and in Council Bluffs, out pops a box with 2 pills in it. That mother then has to take 1 pill on the webcam and is told to go home, and 24 hours later, take another one. She then goes through the process of having an abortion at home. It's dangerous, it's unsafe, in my opinion, it's unethical. This bill is designed to eliminate that practice. A lot of people out there, I shouldn't say a lot, there were some people out there when I first filed the legislation that took exception with the way the bill's worded. Fine. I see Martin Cannon sitting over there. Martin helped me a lot when we were crafting the late-term abortion ban. He can tell you flat out how difficult it is to try and craft some of these things. You want to have the intent down, but to get the legalese and the language and the code, that takes some refining. So some people took exception to language. I said from day one, I'm not stuck with the language. As long as we can get to the ultimate goal of ending webcam abortions, that's fine. I'll do whatever needs to be done with the language. That wasn't good enough. And all people didn't want to talk to me then. They waited until after we were past our self-imposed deadline to come to me and go, I want to work with you. And I'm not necessarily talking about legislators. I'm talking about some other people out there. The organization that put out, there is an organization out there. It's known as Iowa Pro-Life Action. They are registered against my personal bill and the webcam abortion bill. They're the only so-called pro-life organization to be registered against these pieces of legislation. These pieces of legislation have the support of every other pro-life, pro-family group in the state of Iowa. These are groups that have been down in Des Moines working on your behalf to advance common family values for decades. Iowa Right to Life, Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition, Family Leader, Americans United for Life, Concerned Women for America, and it goes on. Those groups realize that we can move the ball down the court, that we can help save the unborn. Planned Parenthood right now is performing about 3,000 to 3,500 webcam abortions a year in Iowa. Those are 3,500 innocent lives that are being snuffed out. That. We can stop this practice. We can move forward in saving the unborn. Is the ultimate goal to stop all abortions? Absolutely. It is. But we have to recognize that we can only go so far with a divided legislature. It doesn't mean we can't push forward as much as we can on advancing in personhood legislation. It doesn't mean that. But we also have to be pushing on every other front that we can move forward to save the unborn. Now this organization has gone out, and for some reason, they have a personal vendetta against me. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. I've had multiple email conversations over the past 12 months with these folks, and I've actually known these folks for quite a while. Sat with them at the Republican Party of Iowa's breakfast, the first day of the legislature. They were at the same table I was. And I approached them, and I said very kindly, I said, look, I know we haven't always agreed in the past, but we work together this year to save the unborn. And to paraphrase, I got told, well, if it's not all the babies, then that's not something we're going to support. So again, we're going to have to go for all of them or none of them.